Hiya, it's episode 98 of Spacebrains, and we're talking about science fiction film The Quiet Earth. Came out in 1985.
Hi, and welcome to Spacebrains, the show where we watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, it's episode 98, and we're talking about science fiction film The Quiet Earth, which came out in 1985. In this episode, we'll reveal what we thought about the film, the ins and outs of narrative and film language, plus a nice deep dive into a specific piece of science that the filmmakers are proposing. The Quiet Earth is directed by Geoff Murphy, screenplay by Bill Barr, Bruno Lawrence and Sam Pillsbury, and it is based on a novel called The Quiet Earth by Craig Harrison.
Yeah, so turn back now if you haven't seen this film, because this is your spoiler warning.
Warning.
We're going to go through everything.
Everything and anything.
Everything, everywhere, all at once. Well, no, that's another episode. We'll do that later.
Definitely.
The Quiet Earth tonight.
So let's get into Act 1 of Spacebrains by starting with the synopsis of The Quiet Earth. It's based around a man named Zac Hobson who awakens to find himself totally alone in the world. Well, in New Zealand, to be exact. And he's in his desperate attempt to search for others. He finds the only other two who have survived, like him, who have their own sort of agenda. What was your number one takeaway from A Quiet Earth? Sorry.
My number one takeaway from The Quiet Earth.
The Quiet Earth.
is simply that left alone for 4 or 5 days, it is ordinary to believe oneself a god.
It is. It is. I would.
I was surprised, we were talking about this pre-recording, how quickly Zac goes from, oh yeah, okay, no one's around, to, okay, I'm just going to break everything, every norm and thought that I would normally have, and I'm going to, just be a little bit bonkers.
Yeah. I really liked how rapid he descended, actually. Like, it was real quick.
And I think that's not necessarily unlikely as well, because I've thought about this, it's one thing to wake up and there's been some sort of apocalypse and there's very few people around.
Yeah.
But when you find... Because this, I think it was about 5 days in, he mentioned or something.
Yeah.
He found, he'd gone through city centre, gone through town, this little town, the suburbs. He'd had a radio announcement on repeat. And it's just that point where, and of course, we find out later on that he had knowledge that there was this grid Project Flashlight, that he suspects killed everyone.
Caused the issue,
Or caused the event or the effect, whatever it is. And so he falls into despair extremely quickly, which you would, because if you thought you were one of just a few people left, after one of the some disease or something, it's not so bad, because then you kind of go, oh, okay, I'll find some other people. I know there are some other people out there, and we can kind of start again, as it were, and try a new life
For sure.
But if you have decided you've ended any possibility of there being other people, it really is just you slipping away to death. It's not like you can have children even to continue the human species. It's just it becomes a nihilistic nightmare where it's just nothing at all matters.
And I think probably shows you the profound effect, because in this version of an apocalypse, everyone has just disappeared. There's no bodies. There's no animals. Like, all the animals are gone. Like, there's no living creatures, as in mammals and animals and humans. And there's no bodies. We normally grieve a body.
Yes.
So in terms of your mindset, and later in the film, him and the others actually do debate, what happened when the event happened. And they kind of, a couple of them do question whether they had died or not died, and and Zac says that, he goes, I thought maybe I had died, and I am the only one left, and you guys are actually a figment of my imagination. Like, so it's hard for us to understand, and that's what's great about a science fiction like this, because it's giving us a chance to live in this world as Zac, and what would we think would be our experience, you know? So, as you said, quite often in those zombie apocalypse films, you know, not every single human is affected. So they sort of strive to find the other humans and then maybe together fight back or create a little colony. You know, we've seen this time and time again, whereas the concept here is it is only Zac. So if you were Zac and you're left, how long would it take you to mentally break down? You know, like how long would you last before you think you're a god? Or he starts talking to Hitler, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, I mean, he does all the normal things, like just sort of moves into a fancy house and drinks champagne and a raw egg. I don't understand that.
No, I don't get that.
Is that
anyway?
Maybe a listener can get in touch if that's what they have for breakfast.
Yeah, maybe it's a New Zealand thing.
It looks like the breakfast of champions, if you ask me.
It does, doesn't
like
it?
Rocky, New Year's Eve, Rocky would have a raw egg with some champagne.
With some champagne. It's Rocky. Yeah, it's the next step in Rocky evolution, isn't it? Just add a bit of champagne to your raw egg.
Yeah, why not? So tell me though, was this a warning, hope, or experiment?
Oh, it's a difficult one, that I reckon. I'm going to do this by elimination. I don't actually think it was a story of hope.
No, there's not really any hope.
Not a lot of hope in this. So it could be a warning. It's a cautionary tale because the experiment. What was it called again? You just
Project
said
Flashlight.
That's right. Is it that science? It's the old. Has science gone too far? Which again we see
and withholding information from people because they're saying the Americans didn't tell us, and then Api says, of course, well, you didn't tell me.
Yeah,
and
and you don't, and we know this is the truth, right? Like there's experiments going on and military technology being invented that we don't necessarily know what's going on with it.
No.
And the side effects of it, or whatever, you know. So,
and we've had cases where that's come out later on, like Agent Orange,
that's right.
And things where they go, well, you know, it seems that maybe they could have told more people that it was not a great thing. And
yes, and then it could be an experiment because it's a bit of a what if. Like, what if an event happened where you were the last person left on Earth? I'm going to go with an experiment, I reckon, for this
experiment?
one. Yeah, I reckon it's a what if. Like, what? That's
I think it is a little bit more because, the cautionary side of this, it is brought up a few times of like, you know, here we are, like, playing with God's power without due caution.
Yeah.
But the themes and the underlying plot of this didn't really explore undoing that. Like they just... It was more about their personal relationships and their experience of being alone, and Zac's guilt and efforts, and the way knowledge is being withheld from different people, and possibly there is some exploration of alternate universes. How the world might really work, but caution. There's a bit of a caution in there.
Yeah, there's definitely
but
caution.
It's not like Alien, where it's definitely caution, as in don't go down and poke around and stuff you're not supposed to.
And we probably don't. The ending of this film is a bit open to interpretation. It's a bit indie styled that way. I feel like I have my version of what happens at the end, and I'm sure Surrey does too, and you out there in listener land might as well. And the filmmakers aren't... It's not a complete package at the end of the film where they totally are answering the question. So then I think that's, to me, where it's also an experiment, because it's like, what if this happened, and then where would that lead you as a person? Where does it lead Zac?
Yeah, where does it lead you? And where does it lead your thoughts at the end?
Yeah, and what would you do in this scenario? You know, what type of person would you be? What type of thoughts would you go through? Would you survive this type of apocalypse? If
Man,
you were the last
I
person?
could just... If I was the only person at the gym... that would be so good.
Ripped.
I could just take my
you
time.
Get totally ripped.
Well, the rear delt fly machine is the most popular machine ever. I can never get a full set out on that.
You could get one in your own place if you were Zac, couldn't you?
Well, I could just go live at the gym. Why not?
Live at the gym.
They got showers and toilets and
that's
a
right.
vending machine. That's good. It's right next to the supermarket.
Everyone's leftover sweat.
Yeah, no, it's very very well cleaned. It's cleaned every day, and everyone wipes up after themselves. It's good.
Everyone's a wiper.
And there'd be no one there. I could just clean it off and then
clean it up, and then
I wouldn't have to wipe off after.
No, you
after
wouldn't.
myself. It'd just be my own filth that'd be wallowing in.
And was this the first time you'd seen this film?
Yeah, I'd never heard of it before. I actually thought it was I thought it was a documentary. Well,
Right.
I didn't really, because you said it's not. And I went, okay, it must be a feature film.
Yeah.
But there is a documentary that was based off a book called The World Without Us, which is about, what if people all disappeared?
Yeah, right.
If everyone just vanished, like in this, if everyone just vanished, bang, instantly. So not a case of we slowly die off, whatever, but it's in day one, without us, what starts happening? What does nature do?
Yeah.
But it wasn't. So I went into this, I thought this would be interesting to see. 1985, I knew it was sort of independent, or certainly as a New Zealand low budget thing here. We've sort of seen Peter Jackson come out of New Zealand around this time.
Yep.
Was it 87?
I think Brain Dead was around 87, wasn't it?
Or 85 maybe. His first one was Bad Taste.
Yeah.
And then Brain Dead and Meet the Feebles and Brain Dead.
Yeah.
Which are very unlike the Lord of the Rings entirely.
Well, and he also made that mockumentary, which is really great, for Forgotten Silver, which is a great
Forgotten Silver. No, I haven't seen that one.
Mockumentary. It's really very clever.
But around the time, so I was thinking, okay, I'd like to see how he's going to have the guy all by himself. Like, how far can they go? Because sure, he's walking the streets of, I don't know what city that was actually, Wellington.
Presume Wellington.
It looked like it had some skyscraper type thing. It was it wasn't like a little country town.
No.
But they got a few good scenes there where he was absolutely alone.
Yeah.
Like not a car moving, not a thing going on there.
Yeah.
And I was curious to know how they did that. So that's what I was still looking forward to, that and finding out where this film was going to go.
Yeah, for sure.
How about yourself? What expectation did you have coming to this film?
Well, no expectations, but quite often that's a really good thing. Like, we watch these films that are, that we haven't heard of, or we think that we know of. Like when we saw Killer Clowns, as I talked about then, I remember seeing it on the VHS at the rental shop, So I don't even remember this one, but it popped up in my Amazon feed, and I thought, it's science fiction, a guy at the end of the world, and it's New Zealand. Like, let's give it a go, So I still remember, thanks to Sean at Little Space Planet Sci-Fi Film Festival, that movie Brother from Another Planet. Like, I hadn't heard of that, and that is just such a great science fiction little indie film, right?
It's a little gem,
and the fact that, again, that was that the 80s, that one?
84, I think.
So, and you and I grew up in the 80s as kids, and it's just like those 80s films, there's a vibe, there's a feeling in them, and this film does have it as well. It's still got the feeling of the 80s in it, I reckon. Although this isn't against New Zealand. I mean, New Zealand and Australia, we're very close, and the cars are the same type of cars, and there's a Holden Ute in this, and even some of the way the Outback is shot, and the car's a bit Mad Maxy at times, I thought, and Mad Max was a few years before this one, but the expectation going in of just thinking, hey, this is like a little independent 1980s New Zealand film. It could be a little gem, and I think that this film is a little gem, actually, and I felt very satisfied watching this film. There's maybe a little bit of dating going on, like a little bit of time going past, special effects, things. But as you said, they did some really great... there's some really great, cars crashed on the highway. There's some, at the start when he wanders around, there's the, the line marking that's just gone off into the field, There was a truck, turned over. There's a petrol tanker stuck in the middle of a bend. And they kept that very consistent throughout the whole film, didn't they? So everywhere they went, and in the city and the towns and the roads, they just kind of left those little sort of markers.
There were no cars just parked nicely.
No,
there was
everything was
stationary in the middle of an intersection.
Yeah,
places that you would never leave a car.
Yeah, and there was the other thing, I think, that if you remember him and the B story, the woman Joanne, she when they find like that woman, that dead body.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, maybe there is, or there has been some other people around. And that looked like, there's some shit has gone down here, like a violent thing has happened. But that's never really explored, like in The Walking Dead, they kind of go off and explore that. But in something like this, they didn't explore it, but it just meant that there was a world building going on.
Yeah, there was a guy smashed through the windscreen of a car. And...
Yeah. So yeah, I thought this was a cool little gem. And I do also think, and we'll come to it a bit later, is I think there's also some very interesting sci-fi conversations this film raises. Like we've already talked about, how quickly would you go mad? Or would you descend into madness? Or would you...
First opportunity.
Is he Surrey running around with the space brain on top of his head, totally naked, at the gym?
And then I go insane.
And then he goes insane, yeah. So
take that off, put on a conservative
whatever that
suit.
machine Surrey was mentioning before, he's just on it 24/7. That's it.
My rear delts would be massive.
You're like this guy. You remember that's the Holden. He drives it into the shopping centre. That. Like they don't do that in the zombie films. You always think, well, yeah, like just drive the car in. Why not?
Yeah, he does. He's doing his shopping. He takes a big mower statue. He says, I'll have that.
Yeah, so...
And for some reason, a whole bunch of TVs.
Yeah, and again...
I think in the 80s, maybe that was a status thing. Or
that was, hey, everyone wanted a TV.
You wanted 2 TVs. If you had 2 TVs, oh my God.
Oh, no.
Whereas now it's like, you get roadside collection of just perfectly operational TVs that people can't get rid of any other way but send them to the tip.
So, and how did this film make you feel, Sorry?
It made me feel a little bit lost and you know introspective of that. We talk about the madness, but also things like global warming or the pandemic and things. You're sort of going, what are we really doing? We're like running around like turkeys or chickens with their heads cut off, thinking that certain things are important. We're invading other countries like on a whim just because we feel like it or it's politically expedient or something. And so I think that's all really kind of pointless ego stroking. And you're watching this film because he makes this point where he stands up and addresses his crowd, which includes famous figures and a mower bird. And he says, like we thought we were gods, we thought we could do whatever we wanted, and now here we are. I seem to have achieved that, or something to that effect. And it's that same thing. Like you want to like get people and sort of shake them by the lapels a little bit and sort of say, what on earth is going through your head that makes you think that saying they've got weapons of mass destruction is an important thing? It's just not as important as you seem to think it is. It's just going to make people unhappy. Why are you trying to make the world unhappy? Like, what's the purpose of that? Likewise, you'd say to Saddam, it's like, why the dictator thing? You could be good with this power, you could do some great things.
That's right.
But instead, you're kind of, preening your feathers and, fluffing the beds of your friends. Like, what? Why would you? What? Have a little bit of a watch this film and have a bit of a think about your own position. And that's what I was thinking is like, how many things do I do because I think they're somehow important? How many rear delt flies do I really need to do? I mean, at what point am I powerful enough?
And wasn't it interesting what you're saying there that like when him and the girl discover each other, they just kind of embrace. Because they've been alone for whatever it was, 5, 6, 7 days.
I think that's been a couple of weeks because she mentions for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks she basically was a bit crazy.
And he'd moved out. So sorry, I'm wrong. So the time was, and he does embrace. They embrace, and then even when is it RJ I think or Api comes along. There's a bit of a standoff to begin with, and then once that kind of it's the three of them. They embrace, like all three of them embrace in the middle of like the town park thing. And it was just, I haven't seen that in other apocalypse movies.
No. Well,
and
mind you,
I thought that was interesting.
This could be a bit of a cultural thing because this, like in American apocalypse, because that's what we get a lot of. It's all guns and machismo and cannibals and
every man for himself.
All manner of, survivalists not trusting anyone and shooting people and stuff like. And I'm trying to picture that happening in Australia, and I was like, I know Jeff next door. He's nice. And like the guys across the way there, I don't talk to them, but I couldn't imagine them pulling out a machete and going apocalyptic.
And remember, was it Shanghai Fortress? Is that the one?
With the space, the force field over Shanghai.
Yeah, and remember that they kind of, we were finding that culturally it was interesting that they were kind of collectively working together.
Yeah, constantly.
Constantly working together. Like, it wasn't about every man for himself. They were just constantly working together.
Yeah, and there was a saying with the Wandering Earth.
The Wandering Earth.
Which is also just
simple, yeah.
Everything comes together, everyone works towards a purpose.
Everyone works towards one goal.
And so I have a feeling this is this New Zealand and somewhat Australian, because I've seen it in a couple of other Australian science fiction where there's more
community idea.
Gentle communication.
Yeah.
Like it's not immediately grab gun, what are you doing? Get out of here. Blah, 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 blah,
blow
blah.
your head off, yeah.
It's more kind of, even where there is a bit of suspicion, like with Api, he has the gun. He's not like roughing Zac up, and Zac's not like looking for a way to kill Api. It's just kind of, there's a bit of a tense standoff, and then, Api sort of puts he's not sure, and then when he hears the radio that, there's just, these are the only two people, and he goes, he drops the gun and he just walks and he goes, okay, I don't have to protect myself. This is sweet.
And that's what I mean. What you were saying, I think that's what the filmmaker is sort of talking about here, is like the importance of what is important. This huge international collective military project that maybe has wiped out humanity, and then what's left is just a few humans, and what really is important, and it's like, well, you've been, if a human is alone for long enough, well, they're just kind of going to wither and die. We're supposed to be with other humans, It's you mentioned COVID, so I mean that's really something my wife and I talked about a lot with COVID, is you've kind of lost the community aspect a bit, and I think now it's been a couple of years past COVID and things have calmed down. People are ready to really get out in the community, and they want more community stuff, so we're in a bit of a process of, we have gone through this in a way, we were forced into isolation, and we know how important it is for everyone's mental and physical health to actually get back out and be in community, If you remember the M. Night Shyamalan film, Old, that baby dies on the beach because of no attention.
Yeah.
Because, in the baby's life, whatever it was, a week went past in a few seconds, and it died because no one held it.
Yeah.
So as humans, we need to be held. And that's what this film is doing as well. They embrace each other after being alone.
And it's funny that
we're not alone.
My wife and I spoke about this, and we talk about with like some of these apocalypse films where 99% of the population is wiped out by a disease, for example. So there's not zombies running around. There's just like
dead. They're gone.
Contagion-y type thing, And we've often gone, oh, geez, that'd be nice. I mean, not for the people to die. No. We don't want that. But for the fact that you could just be there and, not be surrounded by people constantly doing... You know why we can't have nice things? Because people. We're the reason we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
And
that is true.
And each of us thinks it's other people that causes the problem.
Yeah.
But that can't be true, can it?
No.
It can't always be everyone else that's causing the problem. We must...
Oh, it can. Yeah, it's everyone else.
It's like everyone else on the road is a bad driver.
Yeah, that's right.
And you just think, well, but they all think that too. So who's right?
Yeah.
But we've often thought that, we'd be like, it'd be nice, just such a simple lifestyle, subsistence. It would kind of be a bit hard, but it'd be... They always, in the shows that we try to make out like it's some horror. We've lost everything. No, you haven't. What are you talking about? But this is a different scenario.
Yeah. Which
I thought... Because we were talking about that, it'd be kind of nice. And we said, well, it's like when I work from home, my wife doesn't come in and bother me much. Sometimes every now and then she'll come in and say something, or she's got to do something in the room, whatever. Yeah. But it's just like, just knowing that she's in the house is comforting. Yeah. And when, she often goes out shopping or she's walking dogs or whatever, I'm by myself. And it can feel a bit lonely after about 4 hours or so of me just wandering about the house knowing I'm by myself. It's kind of lonely. So I can imagine, it's an interesting study then on loneliness, I guess.
It is. So what makes this a science fiction film?
Science fiction.
Could we still make this film without the sci-fi element?
No, because you'd have to substitute with another sci-fi element. So you'd have to have like a world contagion.
Yeah.
Or you'd have to have aliens abducting everyone.
Yeah.
Or you'd have to have something, because what we're doing here, of course, we could sort of explore similar themes where people maybe got shipwrecked on an island.
Yeah, Castaway.
But Castaway, on the other hand, though, he knows the whole rest of the world is out there.
Yeah,
and the rest of his life, and he's trying to get to them. There is nobody else out
And
there.
it took him a lot longer to descend into madness, didn't it, in Castaway?
Well,
Before
yeah, I
he
think
starts talking to Wilson.
Well, and I think that's because he knew that he wasn't.
Yeah.
You know, he had a difficult situation.
He was more like stuck in a prison.
Zac has got a absolutely hopeless situation.
Yeah.
And I think, so it's science fiction because, again, what it's done is let's look at, how we would feel about being responsible for a tragedy and how would we feel about maybe dying or not. But then you're going to amp that up to 11, of course, because you're going to say, well, let's literally make this a world-ending event that this guy feels he's probably responsible for. Let's, have Api get possibly murdered by his good friend whose wife, was romantically interested in Api. Let's really do that. But then, of course, they all managed to come back. Or did they? We don't know. And you can't do that without invoking magic or science fiction. And in this case, they chose science fiction.
They did.
Rather than some sort of... It's still just a hand wave, though, isn't it? There's not much of a difference in practicality.
No, they tried to explain... There was a few explanations of the science in this film as well, wasn't there?
Yes.
So even with the fish, they sort of explained why there was maybe some fish babies post-event. He was continuously... sort of deciphering what he'd been working on and the fact that probably did cause the event.
Yes.
And so they weren't trying to be, a magical wand, just the sun flared up and abracadabra.
Yeah.
The whole planet's disappeared. It was actually that there was some sort of basis of science in the explanation. And then even when when we're heading towards more the third act, he's monitoring things, isn't he? He's recording scientifically. He's trying to figure it out, and he's measuring the sun, isn't he? And he's he's saying, "Oh, things are changing." So there was too many elements of this plot that actually tried to explain science in it.
And the ultimate ending was driven by that science.
Yeah, that's right as well, because he wanted to
Which,
destroy
of course,
the machine.
I love the way he's trying to put forth the argument saying, it could not be that. Yeah, maybe it's not that. It could be these other sort of things.
Yeah.
And then the other two guys, Api and Joanne, are sort of doubting his commitment to it. He says, no, not really. I think it was the grid.
Yeah.
Let's go blow it up.
Yeah. Like a good scientist, he actually was like, well, there is other hypothesis.
Oh, yeah, there's other
to.
entirely possible things, but let's blow this thing up because it's probably that.
It's a better ending anyway.
Yeah.
So just to deviate a little bit, any science fiction creative projects you're working on yourself, Surrey, at the moment?
I'm rewriting Act 1 of my book, which is nice.
Cool.
So I've managed to, thanks to my dissection of all of these movies over these past years, come upon a new way of approaching my book, which is good. Yep. I've got, as I said, I think previously my son and I are working on a new website development business, which is nice.
On rewriting, I mean, Sylvester Stallone, who wrote Rocky.
Yes.
And he wrote other stuff. He had a couple of published novels out there, and he's written other scripts, and he's been involved in writing of other films that he's been in. His writing technique was just write. He knew as he was writing, 90% of what he was writing was not really right, but he just wrote it anyway, knowing that then he would rewrite it.
Yes.
And Aaron Sorkin, Oscar-winning screenwriter, says, write your draft and then rewrite it. Just rewrite the whole thing again. You'll realise in the second version what is actually important and what is not important.
That's pretty much what we're doing with there. And yourself, speaking of rewriting, are you up to rewriting your script?
Not rewriting, no. I'm in the fun bit, the writing bit.
That's the first bit where you think it's all great.
Yeah. So I think I've been mentioning I'm heading towards writing this feature, low-budget feature, but I'm also just writing my short films. Written out another little horror, more of a horror than a sci-fi the other day on Saturday morning, so that was really good. But I'm keeping to my... Every Saturday morning, I'm going to the library and doing about 3 hours of writing.
Oh, good.
So I've got that rhythm, which is what I was doing a couple of years ago as pre-COVID. I had a good rhythm going on. So thanks to my supportive wife, who's kind of go, get out the door, go do it, which is really great. And then also on my morning train rides, probably 2 out of the 5 days, I'm kind of actually writing. The other days I'm doing stuff with spacebrains and other things, but... trying to again kind of had it, and I had the experience, and this is something that I think most writers have. I think it was about a week ago that I really hopped on, and I didn't feel like writing, but I made myself write. And this is on a train, so it's not necessarily I know Stephen King's not big on this. He sort of is more like, no, you should sit at a desk. You know, you should sit down
with a bottle of whiskey and a half kilo of cocaine.
Well, he did in the 80s, but he doesn't do now. But he was more like, do it. You need a space. But anyway, I also believe you use what you got. So, but I had that experience the other day. I think it was might have been last Wednesday actually, and hopped on. The train ride's about an hour from Mandurah to Perth. And I tried to start writing, and maybe I was a bit distracted and I couldn't quite get into it, but I kind of just was like, nah, just keep going. This is your time to write. Yeah, and then maybe after about 10, 15 minutes started writing, and then it kind of then it just flowed. And by the time I got to Perth, I actually was very much like, oh, wow, that was actually quite a good experience, what I was kind of happy with myself is I did persevere. I pushed through that first 10 to 15 minutes was pretty damn uncomfortable. Like, there's 101 distractions, right? Like, you could go on your phone, you could watch your Netflix, you can, you're listening to music, you can just look out the window. There's some beautiful scenery. There's interesting people that hop on the train, if you really look at people. But I pushed through all that, and the next thing you know, I had words on the page, and I didn't really want to stop,
No, I've had that experience as well, where I've gone and go, and I sort of look at, chapter 15, you look at it and go, And so then I usually what I do there is I've got an ideas pad or like a folder I put. So I'll start putting some ideas in there, and then like I said, about 10, 15 minutes you sort of warm up to it, and then I'm like, oh, actually no, that's what I should do, and you jump back on chapter 15, and you start powering out.
Yeah, so I think there's always a good lesson there that it is whether it's ideas or not, and. And again, going back to even when I've had my 3 hours at the library, I know sometimes that's quite painful, and other times you're in that zone. I wish we could be in the zone every time, but it's not the case.
If only.
And anyway, the festival is getting closer and closer.
Yes, for those who are just joining us, we run the Spacebrains Science Fiction Film Festival here in Mandurah, sunny Mandurah.
Yeah.
It is a science fiction film festival, as in a type of competition. Because I know that some people refer to simply a screening of existing films as a film festival, which it is.
Yeah.
But this is a new short films and feature film science fiction competition.
It is. You have the chance to win a pretty cool science fiction Spacebrains trophy, unique to that category. We do short films, we do music videos, we do feature films, and the best of the best get chosen for screenings on a nice big cinema screen.
Right, the Reading Cinema in Mandurah.
Mandurah, and with the live audience. And this year, we're going to have a keynote presentation by the one and only Luke Spark.
Luke Spark, who's got his new occupation, Rainfall. I think that's come out in Netflix in America.
Yeah.
It got some cinema screens as well.
It did.
And it's a real crack of Australian sci-fi mixing like Independence Day and Star Wars.
Yeah, sort of
would not be
idea.
an uncommon sort of comparison.
Again, it's sort of an apocalyptic world, isn't it?
It's like
because
alien
the aliens
invasion.
have taken over and people have left. Their cities are burnt to the
There's
ground.
a sequel to that
stuff.
film coming out at some point in the next few years, I think.
There is, yeah.
He's working on that.
So, we've got him doing a bit of a keynote before the screenings, telling us a bit about, his career as a filmmaker, filmmaking in general, science fiction. So he'll get to do that. And then we'll go through the films and award the best of the best. Earlier in the day, we're also going to have a couple of really meaty, lengthy workshops.
Yes, we got two, because we did a bunch of shorter workshops last year.
We did.
And they were awesome.
Yeah.
They brought together some great talent there. This time we've got some people want a bit more hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
So our podcasting workshop, which we open with, is going to be going for a couple of hours. It's a chance to record, edit, upload, produce, create a podcast.
Ooh,
what's involved
exciting.
in doing that.
Yeah.
There'll be some demonstration of what technology can be used, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then after our lunch break, we have Stephen Dedman, who's he's a writing instructor, teacher at Murdoch. He's also a published author of various short anthologies and novels of science fiction, dark fantasy, verging some horror elements. Yeah, he's he's done a lot of that
Exciting. Yeah,
in
yeah,
his
no, he's
long
well
and
written.
storied career.
Yeah.
And so he's going to be presenting a writing workshop, which he guarantees will be hands-on. You will be doing some writing.
Cool.
You will be learning something.
I will be writing.
Yeah, I'll be in that, sitting at the table too.
Me too,
Unless
yeah.
we sell out all our tickets and I'm sort of outside, leaning in the door, watching.
I think we're in there, aren't we? We're in there. Can't we squeeze in?
We can do. There's only limited
Or do
seating.
we have to buy a seat?
There's limited seating in there,
Okay.
and if we sell out, well, who knows?
I think we're allowed on the side.
I think we can probably sneak in
Talk
there.
to the promoters.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can still submit your film. It's getting very close to the end
man,
of that.
we're going to have to select all these films soon.
If you're really, editing at that final degree, submit via Film Freeway. The deadline is coming up and that's it for 2023. And then very soon we'll announce tickets for sale for the workshops, the festival, all-day kind of ticket options. So just stay tuned to the socials for that.
Stay tuned.
So let's get into some Act 2 of the episode tonight, where we go into a little bit more detail on plot and talk about some of our experience on narrative and symbolism and camera and lighting and just things that stood out to us throughout The Quiet Earth. And then also move on to talking about some science in it, in some more details. So this film was directed by Geoff Murphy, and as I mentioned before, Bill Bear, Bruno Lawrence, and Sam Pillsbury all wrote the screenplay based on a book, The Quiet Earth, by Craig Harrison. It starred Bruno Lawrence, one of the writers, Alison Routledge, Peter Smith, and it came out in 1985 in the US. Was filmed in New Zealand and had a pretty, I think, decent budget for 1985 of 600,000 New Zealand. Would probably equate that to a couple of mil these days. So I think around, same here in Australia. Most feature films, you take Luke Spark, like his first occupation, I think it was $1.5 million was the budget. So, if you think about a couple of mil for a feature film in Australia and New Zealand is pretty going average. And then we start to top that up for the bigger films. So, and did do reasonably well at the time. Don't have any box office-wise, returned that money as well. So I think it did okay for the timing.
The old director there, he went on to do Dante's Peak and Under Siege 2.
Yeah. So
I don't remember that one. Under Siege 1, I do remember. That was...
It's on a...
train? Actually, I think it's on a train.
It's the one on the train.
I have seen that one.
Yeah,
oh my
it is
goodness.
the one on the train.
There you go. So anyway, he went on so that definitely both those films had much bigger budgets.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why
had Pierce Brosnan in Dante's Peak, I think.
Yeah, I quite liked Dante's Peak, to be honest. I thought it was a good film at the time. And anyway, we do like to break our narrative down into some common elements that you can find from all good story and script writing teachers and just good story. So people like Campbell, Schneider, McPhee, Field, these are all script writing teachers that talk about the concept of a 3-act structure, which then gets broken down into some specific moments or beats or scenes that we can kind of plot throughout a story. So what happens in that first act,
First act is all about introductions, but it's something I was actually talking about with my wife about. We watched a film, Battle Angel Alita, which is a film based off an anime based off a manga. Okay, so it's a pretty cool film.
Yeah.
It finished and my wife said, is there a sequel to this or something? Like, it feels a bit, unclosed. And I sort of thought, well, actually, it's a very Japanese ending. Like, this comes from the anime, and they tend to do things like this because they're not following the same Western tradition. But I had to think about it, and it comes down to here. So in Act 1, you have the opening image, which is... Sometimes it is literally just a static image, but it's just the very first sort of bit of information that you visually see and the feeling you get.
Yeah.
And then at the very end, we talk about the closing image. And Battle Angel Alita did not bookend. So the opening image is very good for establishing the world and the rules of that world and the tone and the feeling and perhaps maybe a bit of theme going in there. But it also comes important as setting a stage for how the ending will play off in order to give that conclusion.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting insight that I had there. So the opening image here, so go watch Battle Angel Alita. It's well worth the watch. It's pretty cool. But notice how it leaves you at the end feeling on edge.
Yep.
So the opening image, this will, as I said, introduce the world and so forth. We meet the characters. So in the first 10, 12 minutes, we're going to see a bit of some of the routine or sometimes it's not terribly routine. It could be like James Bond. There's like an action scene at the very start. But in any case, that's James Bond's life.
Yeah, he's always covered in action.
He's with people shooting and helicopters, and he goes off a cliff and a big Union Jack parachute pops out. So we've been told he's proudly British. He's a bit of an action go-getter. He's highly skilled. And that's your opening image there. Yeah. And then, of course, you have to have the inciting incident. So not too long after that, you need the audience to know where the film's going. So you might say, this James Bond, we'll do a slightly alternate James Bond here where there's someone doing something quite an ordinary action sequence. Maybe they're stopping a bank robbery. And then let's say one of the bank robbers, starts firing a weird laser zappy gun, which just totally destroys the armored car and blows up the police helicopter and stuff. And the main character sort of falls down and goes, holy crap, I've been cut off from my unit, and the bad guys are now got free reign. What am I going to do? And that's the thing, because as the audience member, you're sitting there going, oh yeah, okay, he's busting up a bank robbery, fine, okay, where's this going?
Yeah.
And then this pops out, and as the audience member go, holy moly, he's going to have to find out where that gun came from. That was science fiction-y.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to, he's been cut off, like his radio has all been destroyed, and all the police vehicles around him are all destroyed. So he's going to have to somehow, I guess, chase the bad guys, or maybe get back to his, you know what's going to happen. You know what you're expecting here. You're expecting a bit of a chase, a bit of excitement. And that's what that inciting incident has to do. It has to have you get that direction, which is a plot point, and the plot is what gives you direction and drive for the story elements.
Yep.
But before we reach the end of Act 1, the main character has to debate a little bit. Will he just maybe wait for the ambulances to arrive and helicopters to come in and pick him up? Or will he know that the bad guys are heading directly towards, this major sports stadium? And he's like concerned that if there's a shootout there, there's a thing going on there. There's tens of thousands of people there. So should he go try and single-handedly chase these guys down and discover the origin of this futuristic weapon? Or should he just sort of wait for the ambulance to come pick him up, which might be too late?
Yeah.
And of course, that's the debate. And we are presented with that because we need to see all the options arrayed. And often this is a chance maybe to present a bit of stakes. So, he goes, I could just sit around and wait. But tens of thousands of people could be in trouble.
But maybe he's got a pregnant wife at home, so if he risks...
He's 2 days to retirement.
Yeah, one of those ones.
So something along those lines. Yeah. He is 2 days away from paternity leave.
Yeah.
Because he has just had a newborn baby.
That's it.
And his paternity leave starts on the Monday.
Yeah, that's right.
And this is the Friday it's
final
happened.
Shift before going.
So he's got like 2 days to solve this if he chooses to start solving it.
Yeah. And there's also a risk factor there. If he dies,
there's a risk,
he's not going to see his
we're
child.
getting mistakes. Yeah. And that leads us into Act 2 because he does decide, he goes, no, damn it, how could I be a good father? How could I enjoy my paternity leave and, all that luxury time you get when you've just got little babies? And when I know I've let all of these people down, I've got to be a good role model and here's the kicker, because my dad was just a stinking loser.
Yeah, that's right.
And, why not?
And if he, they've got laser guns, if he lets them get away, they're going to just get away, aren't they?
They're cop killers. They can't be stopped.
They can't be stopped with lasers.
He's got a chance.
Yeah.
And so, he chooses Act 2. He chooses to continue the story.
He does.
Which is great.
And that's what Act 2 does. It's really fun. They call it fun and games, like the trailer that you see when you go to the cinemas. It's the selling point of the story. So this detective who's got everything to lose by risking himself chasing these supernatural bank robbers, but he goes on that journey anyway.
He does.
As an audience, we're like, woohoo, let's go for it, So
because we're going to see some chase scenes. There's going to be some shooting going on.
Yeah. So this is what he does. He chases them, and they've got lasers, but they've got other technology as well. Maybe they've got flying scooters. They've got hot dog fingers, that kind of idea. They've got superpowers, and I guess what probably needs to happen here as well in the fun and games is maybe he manages to capture or corner one of them And of course, he gets the gun, or he gets some sort of power from
perhaps
them.
this is the B stories. He meets one of these guys who is a rebel from the bad guys. He goes, actually, it was all fun and games when we're just kind of like threatening people and taking their money.
Yeah.
But this has kind of gone too far. I needed the money, because my family's going to get deported if I can't afford a lawyer. So I signed on for the job, and I don't want to go back to Australia because that's where he's from. Just in case you thought he's from anywhere else. He's an Australian in Canada, and he doesn't want to get deported because Canada's lovely. and so begrudgingly, he does share some of his powers. And that'll be good because that also then will start showing us a bit more at what maybe is at stake.
Yeah.
Because we sort of only get a little insight from what this guy knows. And it turns out this guy doesn't really know all that much.
No.
He's sort of just a hired-on peripheral member.
But he's got a bit of technology.
He's got a bit of
a bit of fun and games of it, right? It's the Spider-Man shooting webs and learning how to use the string.
I reckon that first Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film is just a study in the 16-bit 3-act structure.
Totally is. And even what you were just saying, like he's going to be handed this powerful technology straight away. It's like, well, with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like, so he's got this kind of, special gadgets, gizmos, whatever. And this guy that can also explain that there's actually more stakes here, that this is alien technology and they are stealing the gold because the alien spaceship has run out of gold, which is their fuel, and they're actually fueling a weapon.
Right,
and that weapon will be returned to annihilate humans or something, right? So
and the big
there's a whole nother kind of, like there's now a stake. So the point of that is that's what we call is the midpoint. So he's had a bit of fun. He's done a bit of kind of as an audience as well. There's some chasing. There's some flying scooters. There's this kind of weird B character that's a little bit kooky and gives him the technology. But now things are serious because also if the aliens are going to annihilate the planet, well, what about his newborn baby?
Well, this is it. The midpoint, of course, you've got to start having the bad guys closing in. So some aliens start to, because at the moment we're just dealing with some human agents who are just doing it for the money and shits and giggles, right?
And technology, whatever.
And a bit of technology because then they don't realise that they're going to get wiped out as well.
Yeah, no.
But then we're going to see some of the aliens come. So this ramps it up a bit because we got the bad guys, criminals with the tech, dangerous. Now we see some aliens come down, knowing how to use the tech to its fullest.
There's got to be that scene where the bank robbers are actually annihilated by the aliens as they give them the gold.
And because
there's a double crossing,
because that's a ratcheting up of the stakes, isn't it? It's like. Yeah, so they were really tough, and they took out all those cops and stuff, and then the aliens just come and wipe them out, and you just go, "Ooh!"
They can turn the guns and blow up their hands or whatever.
Turn them into sausages.
Turn them into sausages, or something like that. Anyway, so he knows now he's at the stakes, and maybe the cops are also actually closing in, which is great. But then he knows, well, they're too powerful, and here they're just going to wipe out. The cops are all
going to be killed.
They're all going to be killed. So he's got to go out there and warn them. But give away, the secret that he's got a laser gun as well or whatever. So, this is kind of heading in. And then his buddy partner has to come in and kind of, give him maybe something that he didn't give him in the first place, which is kind of like a little extra...
pat on the butt.
That's right. Little extra...
Metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. Metaphorically, but maybe also symbolically, a little extra pat on the butt. And that kind of is the superpower of the laser gun or whatever. But in doing that, he's exposed himself. And, of course, the aliens shoot that buddy dead. So we have this, something has died.
Because he has to enter the secret code into the gun to unlock its full potential.
That's right.
But that set off the tracking beacon on him.
Yeah, and so the aliens destroy his buddy. He gets out. And, now it's sort of almost the reverse, right? The aliens are hunting him. And so he's got to kind of got to warn everyone to get out of the way. He's got to kind of, maybe there is a big football match.
He's got to find a phone to tell his wife that he might be a little bit late for his first day of paternity leave.
Yeah, typical excuse.
But also at the same time, go to your mum's place out of town.
Warner. And so I suppose, we need something here that's going to get him to the bottom, but isn't it as well? We need him to bottom out.
Thunderstorm. We need him to. We go race to the
So
police
he's warned
precinct.
his wife.
But he's racing to the police precinct to tell his buddies to don't close in.
Yeah.
And the aliens are coming at the same time, and he rounds the corner and he calls to his buddy. He says, "Hey, you guys, you got to stop doing that!" And zap!
Yeah, and the whole thing
goes up.
turns into ooze.
There's explosions and smoke, and he's separated. And he thinks that they're dead, but maybe his buddy isn't. Maybe the other cops. Maybe someone got out.
Yeah.
But in any case, he knows that. He realizes that the gun that he's been using, the aliens have been tracking that and listened to him. So he goes, "Oh no, I'm probably at fault for this as well."
And maybe he's under a bit of rubble, and the gun that laser gun that they were tracking has been flung out of his hand, and it's across the road. And as he's taken in this big violent scene, one of those aliens picks up his gun, his laser, and takes it away. So now he doesn't have the
And then
power.
it starts raining, and he's at the side of the road.
That's right.
Wondering.
Doesn't have his wallet.
Doesn't have his wallet.
Doesn't have a phone.
He called his wife, but he can't find out whether she got out okay.
Whether she got out okay.
Or if she's still ordering Uber Eats because she's waiting for the Uber Eats guy to turn up.
And actually, I missed this point as well. That his wallet and phone. The alien picks up his wallet, and so he knows his home address. He's heading to his home address.
Oh my god!
So now he doesn't know. Like he's got no ability to get anywhere, and he thinks, well, they might get his baby and child and blah blah blah.
So this is rock bottom. So we're going to have to go into Act 3 here, but we need a little bit of inspiration.
We do.
And I'm thinking he remembers the bit of information that his B story gave him just before he died, which didn't make any sense at the time. But now he's saying that his men were thinking of stashing some of their gold at the old quarry because that's would be very secure there. And he goes, hang on, if that's so secure, they thought it would protect them from the aliens. There must be something there.
Yeah, right.
And so I've got this new mission. I'm going to go there and get whatever it is that was going to protect them from the aliens and use it against the aliens.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And maybe he needs to swing past old Dad's place because Dad was a useless dad.
Well, he needs a vehicle.
He needs a bit of help.
And he knows his dad has got like an old, reliable Ford pickup truck thing.
Yeah. That doesn't really run, just runs on gas, like it's petrol. It's just...
And it blows smoke.
It just runs. In this age of lasers and that, it's the opposite.
Yes, and it makes you harken back to a simpler time.
It does.
When cars really weren't very reliable at all. But we forget about that part and think that they were very reliable.
We do.
But anyway, so he does have to swing past his dad's place.
Yeah, has to swing past because Dad just lives near the precinct. He used to be an old cop or whatever. All that sort of thing comes up.
He never said he was proud of him.
No, and he doesn't want to lend him his truck. He doesn't want to. So this is the thing. He's got to kind of like muster up all the plan and energy and everything that's sort of gone wrong in his life to confront the dad, to get the truck, to get to this gold mine, to get the weapon, to then get there to save the dad.
You can have the truck, but I'm driving it because I don't trust you.
That's right.
And so now it's him and his dad driving to the old quarry where old man Withers, where there's something that's going to make them secure. He doesn't really know what it is. It's a MacGuffin. It's just going to be it's a briefcase that glows when you open it.
That's right.
But it's going to protect him from the aliens.
Kryptonite, right? Like it's just something that stops the aliens in their tracks.
Yeah, so they're going to go there. That's Act 3.
Yeah.
So Act 3 then is where we have the plan, the gathering of resources, the setting in motion of that act, of the action in order to have a final confrontation. Yeah. The final confrontation always has a hiccup. So the plan, he gets the car, they get to the quarry, they get the thing, like maybe it's some sort of a device, galactic gateway closer mechanism.
Got no idea how it works.
No idea how it works, but it
doesn't matter.
It looks like it kind of works, but it's got an on switch sort of thing. And they go, okay, so we just have to set this off, and they start going through trying to get it to work. And then we're going to have a reversal here. We can't, because if you just press the button and the aliens will go away and everything goes back happy again, you feel a bit empty. You go, well, hang on, there's a big build-up. So you got to have a reversal. And all these movies have this reversal where the hero has to learn something special, something new. And it's got to be about his dad. Yeah. Because he's got father issues. Yeah. Which is why he nearly became a stripper. In fact, he wore a police uniform on his way to be his first strip.
That's right.
But then he looked at the badge and thought, you know what? I can show my dad I'm a better cop than he was.
That's right.
he still strips because it's fun. You know, I mean, why not?
That's it. It's got to make money.
But he doesn't take any money for it. He just says, I'm just doing this for the fun.
That's it.
Goes to set off this device, and an alien comes in and like steps on it, crushes it, and he goes, "Oh my god!" Well, that's kind of screwed that up.
Yeah.
And he's, there's a bit of a tussle and a fight, and then
his dad comes out and kind of, the old shotgun blows the aliens.
Get the hell away from my son!
It just blows his head off. I would imagine at this point in time, and it kind of works. But then the alien's head grows back, and he blows his dad out of the water. And so then this broken machine in front of him, he's got to go, well, brute force doesn't work, but if I kind of click these things together, the magical pieces.
Oh, what?
Like
the magical piece is saying the aliens have their special, take control of the technology bit.
Yeah.
So he actually takes it and lures the alien into taking the tech off him.
Yeah.
He sort of holds and goes, haha, I've got this old tissue. And then goes, haha, you don't know what that is. And alien picks it up and sort of repairs it.
Works it, yeah.
He turns it on and goes, oh, you haven't even activated it yet. And that's when he pulls out his dad's shotgun.
Yeah.
He goes, activate this. And shoots the alien's head off again.
Yeah.
But this time, lunges forward and presses the button. And blip,
actually,
something happens.
Yeah, the aliens destroyed.
Hand wave, go away. Because for some reason you always have these invading forces and stuff that can be defeated by one person doing one simple thing.
That's right. But he turns to his father. His father's dying. Oh, yeah. And his father says, look, I kind of was proud of you.
Yeah, you turned out all right.
You turned out all right at the end of the day.
Sorry, I wasn't there for your son's birth.
Yeah, that's right. Something like that. Bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And then and he thinks, well, okay, there's a little win. But then when he turns around, the other alien's got his wife and baby.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
How's he get out of that, though?
Yeah, well, he's got to figure out a way to get the wife and baby and destroy the alien all in one.
Does he just do like an impassioned plea, like having learnt that his dad?
Yeah, about the father.
His dad never fully expressed the way he felt, and he goes, "Well, I've been doing the same thing."
And while he expresses all this, the alien kind of, supernatural being kind of realizes, oh, this guy kind of is an actual. The alien sees humanity.
They see humanity.
They see, because they were just dealing with bank robbers to start with.
Oh yeah, well, they thought it was just warlike crazy people.
Yeah.
Turns out,
and also the alien realizes that behind him is actually pretty much all of Earth's gold was being stockpiled. In this quarry. Yes. So I think the alien's distracted. He goes, no, I saw humanity, beautiful. Move out of the way, you got all this gold.
Yes, actually, we don't need to destroy you guys. We can just take this.
We'll just take all this. This is fine.
Yeah, it's not really valuable. I mean, people think it's valuable, but we just tell people we still have it all here.
Yeah.
And that's as good as actually having it all here. No one really wants the gold.
No.
We just need to think that you've got the gold.
Yeah, that's right.
Because how much gold does our bank actually have that we bank with? I
don't know.
Probably none.
None. Who knows?
But they tell us they've got plenty, so that's good.
But then maybe he double crosses them and chucks in the laser self-destruct weapon, and now he knows how he packs that into the gold, right?
Okay, so
we into the gold barrel.
So we don't have a friendly.
No, we don't have a friendly ending. No, it's still going to be the ending.
It takes up the.
I think the alien would double cross them and take the gold and turn around with big claws and want to rip off the baby's face.
I guess so. But we get to this is the closing image. So let's have another bank robbery similar, except then what's going to happen is it's going to pull back. It's actually just on the TV, and there is Dad with a now older son enjoying their favourite TV show together. So and he's So that's the bookend, and it makes you go, oh, okay. He's not repeating the mistakes of his father.
Yes,
and he's also not exposing himself to that terrible danger anymore.
Yeah,
he's now a forensic criminologist. So he's,
fair enough.
A desk job.
I think we need to probably brainstorm that a little bit.
Yeah, I think we need to. Yeah, so we got a few themes wild in there. But
they did.
Yeah, we get going in there.
We did.
So let's see how this works in with a real film.
Yeah. So with The Quiet Earth, that opening image, we have a sun slowly rising into the sky.
Yeah.
We then have a man wake up naked in bed.
With
Great shot, helicopter shot.
Doodles flopping about. And my wife said, "Oh, you don't see doodles very often on TV.
You don't. You know,
Boobies,
again, that
you see plenty of boobies, but very few doodles.
you don't. You know, it's a good shot for a doodle because it's straight above it.
Yeah.
It's an aerial helicopter shot looking down at this naked guy in bed, and you know the context isn't there, but he's kind of a bit of a miffed, depressed.
Well,
you know, he goes about the motions.
One thing you note is his bed's just him in it.
Yeah.
There's clearly not a second person around.
No, it's not like he's naked with a woman or anything.
And he wanders out and does his normal routine.
Just like a pretty simple routine.
So what's the impression we get of him in his life? Like, because we're being introduced to the world here. What are we learning about this character?
I think he's like alone. He's a bit down. Yeah, he's not very happy with his life, I don't think.
No, and he puts his suit on as I suppose back in the 80s people wore suits.
They did a lot more in the 80s, the corporate world.
Yeah, and so it's kind of, I think that was kind of his corporate armour.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Because it's like, okay, he does run back to his bed and, pardon me, he runs back to his bed and he clutches the sheets about him. So he's wandering about naked, and then he notices that the TV and the radio stuff doesn't work, and he runs back, clutches it, and he tries to phone people. And it's a bit weird but it does go to show that he's vulnerable, I think.
Very vulnerable, yeah.
And then he falls back into his routine, gets all these bits and pieces on. Yeah.
I mean, I think the whole idea there was the world is a bit cold and he is vulnerable. Like, that's probably a really good word. But it doesn't, in the regular getting ready for work, you don't think anything's that unusual. It's pretty much the same experience for him most days.
You know that something's going to change.
Yeah.
Because as we say, the opening image, the introductory part, before the inciting incident, we're seeing what's normal.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it's got to give us the baseline.
Yeah. And I think he's alone. This is what it was saying at the start there, right? Like that he is alone. And I think also that was his world. He's alone. So what's interesting then is what's the bookend at the end? So we'll come at the end. Like, is he alone at the end of this story or not? You know? And so, let's have a look at that when we come at the end as well. So he starts on his own, lying in bed, depressed, vulnerable, alone in this world. Does he kind of go out like that too? So we'll come back to that later.
And we learn there are no other characters.
Yeah, then we learn very rapidly.
Because we've got to be introduced to all the characters, but we very quickly learn over these minutes that there are no other characters.
Yeah.
As it's suspiciously lacking. There's kettles being left on. There's cars the side of the road. The line marking machine has just gone off.
He goes to the petrol station, which is great. Just puts the petrol. Oh, okay, and then walks inside, rings the bell.
Yeah.
Rings the bell again, for service. No one's there. Looks at the counter. There's that great shot. He looks at he doesn't go around the counter. Save the cat moment, right? Like, he doesn't go and just rob, like, the first, no one's here, I'll just take some money.
Yeah.
Just take some snacks. No, he goes looking for the mechanic.
Yeah.
Looks under the toilet door.
Yeah.
There's a car running as well in the garage, so it's a bit alien what's going on. It doesn't feel quite right. It's feeling quite eerie. And then, as you said, as he drives down the road, there's a truck in the middle of the road. There's the car that's veered off.
And I do
a milkman truck, I think.
Yeah, the line marker.
The line marker
just driven off.
Yeah, that's weird.
At some point, he turns off a kettle and he finds half-eaten breakfast on empty bed.
Yeah.
And so it's the whole thing. You know that it's not just that there are no characters. And it's not like everyone just sort of left.
Yeah.
It's like suddenly everyone has vanished.
Everyone has vanished. Yeah.
And not long ago either, because like a kettle, takes a few minutes to boil?
Yeah.
So someone would have turned it on and then vanished.
Yeah.
Fascinating. So what about, so inciting incidents in this one here, as I say, it's sort of usually the point where, as an audience, you get a feeling for where this film's going. Like what are we going to discover?
Yeah. Like, what's the point? What's the point of the story, right? I think it's probably him. So then he goes to work and he realises that the guy at work is burnt or radioactive or
he's
something.
Lumpy. He's not nice.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, the project must have worked or something, stupid. Like, he kind of...
Did I write what he wrote down there? No.
And so I think there's that scene and there's an explosion there and he kind of has to break out of the facility. So we learn that he's some sort of scientist. He was part of this experiment, which again gives us another character trait. Like he's a scientist.
Yeah.
But then I think really the inciting incident is probably after that. That is, he is here on his own. This project has annihilated or made the human race disappear. And so then the inciting incident to me is what if you were alone? What if this character is totally alone in the world? What do you do?
Yeah. And I think we did have a bit of a debate about that, about what he should do. You know, he asks people to call him. He puts that in a repeating loop.
Does a radio thing.
And so you're asking this debate, you know, will I, wait for people, be patient, or will I just kind of go off the rails?
Yeah. And, I think, again, that's what this guy is doing, right? Like, that's what he would do.
Yeah.
The radio thing was interesting because I don't think everyone would do that.
No.
And so it was kind of like, again, showing like his science brain, I think. Like it was showing that his intellect, go do a loop recording, record it, play it.
Yeah, and having the knowledge to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And it's interesting watching these pre-internet shows as well.
Yeah.
And pre-cell phone.
Yes.
Because if it was made now, you'd have to have some sort of
YouTube clip.
Yeah, you'd have to have some sort of
podcast, anyone?
Podcast, or he'd have to check his phone and like no signal or something, and then he goes on the internet and there are no Twitch streams.
Yeah,
and you go, what? Twitch is running, but there's no streams, or maybe there's like a whole bunch of streams, but there's no people in them.
Yeah.
It's just like an empty chair where you'd normally sort of see a guy doing his podcast.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what you'd do for a repeating signal, like. Because radio, you put out you wouldn't put out a podcast because some people don't listen to them for a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
we've got people going back listening to our 2-3-year-old episodes.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the debate anyway, and they do it in this, is that the power goes out. That's the thing in any sort of realistically, any sort of breakdown of society, the power would go out at some point in time. Power, water, gas would all turn off at some point. So I think you're right. Like, there's a debate. The debate was interesting because he kind of logically tried to get people to come to him. So he painted a sign, a billboard.
A sign, and he had this, come to my address.
Come to my address, the radio thing. And then once that was, he suddenly was like sitting there, probably mentally he was starting to spiral down a bit, like more depression. Because I think there's a great shot of him in his kitchen with, a bottle of whiskey and the radio's playing the loop. And so he's not looking too good. And then he goes, well, I think it's time to upgrade.
Yeah, and I think this is
that's kind
act of 2, isn't it? Like when we next come in, we hear the loop, and we're coming into a luxurious house and the bed, and he's sleeping in the bed, and he gets up. This is where he has his egg champagne. That's so disgusting. My wife and I just looked at it and just went, "What are you doing? You could eat and drink anything you wanted, and you wanted a raw egg with champagne."
Yeah. But there's that sort of fun and games, and it's decadence, I guess, right? Like it's breakfast and he's having egg and champagne.
Well, and you'd expect
he's in this wealthy house. He's got a lovely robe on. It's also what I liked here is it implied almost in his bedroom, like he's even maybe collected other artworks.
Yeah, there's all artworks about
it wasn't
the place.
necessarily just this rich person's house.
Like
he's also
what's that woman with the blue scarf or whatever it is.
Yeah. So again, I think that tells you something about him. Like he's gone and collected.
He does, and he looks at the artwork, and this is I think it's a fairly common act 2 for this type of film.
It is,
and it happens in these Groundhog Day type ones and stuff where is that kind of realization of like, oh, I'm not bound by the previous restrictions I had. So he updates the loop and says, "Oh, here's my new address. Is this one?" And I reckon if you're New Zealander, you probably recognise that as a fancy part of town. It'd be like saying you're in Nedlands or Peppermint Grove or something now.
You're in WA.
Yeah, if you're in WA or Toorak or I don't know.
And I know it's a Botany Bay in Sydney or something. I don't know, or Bondi or
Kirribilli.
Kirribilli,
why not something along those lines?
Yeah, and that's the point then, right? So it's like step 1, you go to the wealthy house, you collect art, you drink champagne and eggs.
He doesn't drive a sports car.
No, he doesn't drive a sports car, no. So
clearly not part of his ideas of status. Because he just drives that Toyota Hilux around.
Yeah.
Which is quite practical because he can put all of his like generator and equipment in the back.
Yeah.
The Hilux, even at the time, was renowned for being, the unbreakable Hilux was the advertising slogan. And, there is some merit to that. Toyota made very reliable cars at that time.
And then he's also shopping, like, as you said, like he drives a ute into the shopping centre. And
that would be very excellent too. I'd love, like, now I'm trying to go into the manager forum here.
Yeah.
And you just sort of go, I've got to get this thing from Jim Kidd and from Coles.
Yeah.
They're the opposite ends. And you're just like, it's going to take forever. Like, particularly if it's a busy day, it's but wouldn't you want to just drive your ute in, load up the back and mosey on down, just drive through.
I think this was a little thing that I haven't seen in these other type of films was we said the TVs, he's loading up a couple of TVs and one falls off and breaks.
Yeah.
And what I just loved is that it breaks and he's just like, he's a bit emotional less about this, right? Like he doesn't care about it. And I just think that's really a nice little moment, right? Because if you really suddenly thought, well, now it doesn't matter. I can drive a ute into a shopping centre. I can just take whatever I want. Whoops, I broke a TV. Yeah. And at the time, it was probably like it'd be like a $5,000 TV, right? Like, and you go, oh, well, doesn't matter. Like, doesn't matter. And so I really like that. It's a nice attention to detail.
It's an interesting thought I've had myself is one of these problems of having all of your wishes granted, it spoils your dreams.
It does.
Because if somebody suddenly turned around and said, here's an infinity of money. Jeff Bezos says, yes, because you forwarded that email of mine on to 50 people, here's $1 billion, And
it's literally $1 billion in your bank account.
Whatever this case is, you go, oh, great, I can get the Ferrari and you got to go.
The house and the clothes.
But why?
Yeah.
Like, I only really wanted the fancy-ass car because I couldn't have it.
Yeah.
And now I can have 20 of them. It's just sort of pointless, really.
That's it. So once you get the one sports car, it's just another car, isn't it?
Yeah, you just sort of go, well, I don't really have anywhere to drive because I don't need to go to work. And I buy the gym.
Yeah.
So suddenly, and I think maybe this scene is showing a bit of that where... Yeah. He's wrestling that Moa statue into his car and knocks the TV off and smashes. And it's like, it's actually not...
It's not worth it.
Yeah, what is this dream of having multiple TVs and stuff?
Yeah.
And like, turns out...
doesn't matter now.
Doesn't matter, but you got the Moa statue, so that was kind of important.
And this is then sort of him... That then is then starting to break down, isn't it? Like he's starting to go a bit mad then.
Yeah, and that's an interesting... turning point in what would be typical of that I've seen in these apocalypse films where or as a Groundhog Day type things where people suddenly discover they've got all this power is just he very quickly goes, well, what is the sense of all this?
Yeah. And he drives a train.
Yeah, I love it. He finds the toy trains and then like he looks at it and goes, oh, this is interesting. And then you see him take a moment and cut and there he is driving a real train. And you're like, yeah, exactly. Why wouldn't you? That looks way cool. Far more fun.
Far more fun. So, it's and this is that's all the fun and games, and then it's the descent into madness, really. So he's having this breakdown of his thought process, isn't it? Of who he is, and he gets a plan of attack of all these speakers and wires.
He has his dictatorial address, and he's talking to Churchill and Hitler and probably Mussolini and Marilyn Monroe and
a whole bunch of
other of these sort of famous figures that were cult status. And has a bit of a chat.
It's funny, isn't it? Because it's like someone that's gone a little crazy, but it's a sophisticated breakdown of him because he talks. Puts on the speakers of a round of applause and the crowd and the camera, the way the filmmaker's done it is like then close-ups of Marilyn Manson and Hitler.
Marilyn Monroe.
Monroe, sorry.
Probably Charles Manson.
Charles Manson's in there, And, of these celebrities and Churchill and stuff and there's nice close-ups of them and then back to him doing his speech at the top of the balcony. So I really liked that scene. I thought it was quite a funny scene.
No, it was interesting because it did reveal... something about, it's sort of foreshadowing later on where he's talking about how he was involved in this project and it was, why do we see these projects which could kill so many people
Destroy
for
us,
no
yeah.
good reasons. And a bit of foreshadowing there about how we're going to discuss things later on.
So then he's kind of saved by Joanne, isn't it?
Yeah, Joanne, yeah.
Yeah, so suddenly she rocks up and, she's this younger, pretty girl, a woman, and yeah, but in showing up, and as I said, like to me, it was such a different scene that she rocks up, they kind of look at each other and they just embrace,
Yeah,
like,
so
they just hug. And it's
like they've been
just a
saved.
genuine hug. Like, it's not a sexual hug either. Like, it's just a genuine hug. And I thought that was just such a nice take on this thing. Like, you've never seen that before in an apocalypse
It was a
movie.
nice way of introducing it, because we talked mentioned I Am Legend. Similar thing happens there where a woman and her child turns up to Will Smith's character. And Will Smith's character has been alone and doesn't realise how poorly equipped he is to deal with other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's like this awkward scene, and they used Shrek as the
bridge.
the icebreaker where he starts quoting Shrek, and it's sort of, oh, well, he can't be all bad. You know, this can't be a terrible situation.
Yeah.
But this was very simple, I think, and kudos to the writer for coming up with it, of just like, they see each other, they hug like long lost friends.
Yeah.
And in fact, my wife and I sort of actually asked, are they supposed to have known each other? Well, like, there was a photo earlier where we saw them together or something.
Yeah.
And we quickly dismissed that and went, no, I think they're just really pleased that there's another person.
There's another person,
And this might be where my wife and I talked about that. It's like, it's one thing to be alone, but knowing, you know, you've got a dog in the other room, or that your wife is just, you know, pottering about in another part of the house.
And I think we can all fantasize about being alone, but the reality is, like, it's, and trust me, I'm a big person. I'd be like, oh, a cabin in the woods, you know. But to be alone, where you know, where if the thought was I'm alone and there's just literally no one, nothing, there's no dogs. No. You can't even have a dog. No. I Am Legend, he's got a dog. You can't even have a dog. Like, it, I think for 99.9% of the population, we would not like that.
No,
you know,
it's the difference between being alone and being lonely, isn't it? Like, being alone just means that there's not another person near you, which is entirely different to being there are no other people anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. So there's as you said earlier in this episode, like, that's a real sullen despair, isn't it? It's a different emotional point. And the filmmakers, writers, they decide at this point in time, like, an embrace would make a lot of sense, and they repeat that later, like we talked about. And I think that's just such a really good emotional sense of it, which is really cool. So we're probably hitting. They do a bit of fun and games, don't they? I reckon. Yeah. They have a plan then, don't they? They actually go looking for people. That's kind of then the plan.
So I was wondering though, midpoint wise, I've got a little note here saying that they found a car crash with some dead bodies. Yeah. So they're like, we're not 100% alone. No. It's clearly like, and because they're fresh. Yep. And then he makes a comment about the sun. He looks at his little dial and says, does the sun look like it's pulsating to you? And she says, no. And he goes, no. And he chucks his little device. Like, as, you know, thinking with my audience cap on, I thought, hang on. Like, the fun and games is coming up, because the fun and games, there were kind of no consequences. They were just exploring, going mad, getting to know each other. Yeah. And then there's this thing of, hang on, there are other people and maybe the sun's not right. Like, there's something is happening that's wrong. Yeah, I was going to say that other people scene, I think, was a bit like, there may be other people and we don't really know. Then the other people could be violent, or the other people could be, you know, it brings up that then story arc that we haven't had so far. Because that's when they go to the hospital and he goes to the School of Science and starts looking at more sensitive equipment. Yes, yeah. So I agree with that it is moving towards some bad guys closing in. The son he believes that something's going wrong or something's changing, and he starts to go down that path. She when she goes to the hospital, she's like, remember, it's like the baby story, like a dead baby, but the baby would have been born after the event, or survived the event. Because she mentions that the event was about 3 weeks ago, but the baby wasn't dead was dead, not 3 weeks dead. Yeah, so it's a pretty horrific. And also there were maggots, which means there are flies. Yeah. And then
Yeah, and then it's probably they are looking for these other people, and he gets cornered into this weird.
Yeah, so I put that sort of bad guys closing in sort of thing.
It was pretty obvious. I thought for me, I was like, "You are going into a trap here, buddy."
My wife
I've watched a lot of Walking Dead.
This is exactly what my wife said. My wife said, I don't think this guy's seen a single zombie movie.
No, it was sort of a little bit obvious, but then again, you think he hasn't really seen any other people, so he's thinking the world's his oyster,
and
right?
In 1985, hadn't seen any of those sort of
The Walking
apocalyptic
Dead
movies.
hadn't been around.
Like
culturally, we weren't as attuned to it, were
keyed
we?
into it. Yeah, like, because I was thinking that first truck across the road. I mean, he's seen a lot of trucks and cars, and you go, okay, fine. But the next one was like a bus has been sort of pushed up and stuff. You're looking at it and go, and there's only one exit down that alleyway. You're just going,
and it's like now it's like a military. It's like what is it called? You're basically funneling your prey down into a hole.
Yeah, I know. It's like you'd sort of look at that and go, like, I'm not going down there. I'm going to find another way.
I'm going to reverse out of here now. But that's the whole point.
That's coming from watching these films and in
learning.
Would you, how keyed onto that would you be if you've been going for, at this stage, couple of months without seeing Joanne's the only person you've seen.
Yeah.
And everything else where you'd expect to see people that know people. So I mean, maybe you'd kind of go, I don't know.
Yeah.
This could have happened weeks ago.
Yeah. So he does. He gets trapped. So this is a real bad guy's closing in, and it's Api comes out with the machine gun, and he's obviously a very different interpretation of the world. Like, he's militaristic. He's got the weapons, he's got the costume. He's kitted up for violence, isn't he?
Yeah, he's concerned that if he meets another person, it's going to be dangerous.
Yes, and so they kind of have a standoff, and then he hears the walkie-talkie, hears Joanne. So obviously, let's lead him to Joanne, and again, that's all set up because he holds him by gunpoint. That again, as watching a lot of Walking Dead and stuff, you're like, oh, this is not going to end well. When he does get to Joanne, as I said, they have this embrace in the park. The three of them. Like, they have a little three-way.
Because they've got the walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
And Joanne says, she says something along the lines of, there's no one else. And because she doesn't know that they're being listened to by Api. And so that when Api hears that, he goes, he was telling the truth, that this really is the only other two people in the world.
Yeah.
And he walks up and drops the gun and goes over to them.
Yeah.
We cool?
That's right. We're cool, bro.
Yeah. Oh, we're okay.
And, they have a little three-way hug. It's quite nice. But then, of course, what I straight away, and this is what the writers have done there, is, well, then now you've got a three-way, don't you? It never ends well.
Yeah.
We already
know
that...
We already know that Zac digs on Joanne.
Yeah, he's kept wanting to have a bit of a crack.
And, and we know that Joanne likes Zac, but she seems like a bit of a free spirit.
Yes.
She's not,
She doesn't want to be tied down to one Zacky boy, especially at the end of the world.
And it does, we do get a bit of the interactions where it's like, hey, I kind of like you, and how's this going to go? And Joanne's kind of, this is quite nice. It's good for, I like both you guys.
Yeah.
And if you put it the other way around, where it's one guy and two women,
and
the guy's going, you're both nice.
Yep.
What's the problem? And the two women are going, well, it's like, I'm not so keen on sharing with another woman. Like, and it's like the 2 minutes are going, it's nice that you don't mind which of us you have a relationship with because we're both nice, but that means one of us is going to be left out.
Yeah.
And, I've not really heard of many long-lasting thruples.
No.
Quadruples probably work out, but odd numbers become difficult.
They do.
I mean, unless you had one of the people was aromantic and asexual, in which case they're just kind of keen to have close human bond.
Yeah.
Which was neither romantic nor sexual.
Yeah.
And that would probably work, but...
It seemed like Zac had then decided, he's like, I can't compete with Api.
I'm not going to... That dude's Mo is just out of this planet,
I'm not in the same
this world,
league. And really probably as this all his lost moment, it's Api revealing that he murdered, he died.
Yes.
Because this other man, his friend, was trying to kill him. And when she quizzes him over that, we get this great flashback scene of the fight, and he's been drowned. Api's being drowned.
It's because his mate found the One Ring.
Yeah. So he's not happy, and then he I murdered his wife.
Yes.
It's a great little hook because straight away you're like, we learned that this guy was military, kind of came around to him, and then, oh no, is he a murderer? You know? So I kind of liked that, and she's a bit pissed off with that. But this is definitely like all is lost.
And we also find out that each of them died.
Yeah.
Or maybe died.
Yeah, maybe died.
And, had this vision of this bright light at the end of a tunnel, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
That was sort of nice. It reminded me of that movie Awake.
Yeah.
Where the reason the son, was it the son wasn't going crazy? No, the daughter. I can't remember which it was. Wasn't going crazy and could sleep. The daughter could sleep was because she had been unconscious, drowned at the time of the event.
Yes.
And so they resuscitated her afterwards, and then she was like, sweet. And this sort of reminded me of the same thing, is that these people were dead at the time of the event, or close enough to death.
Yeah.
And so you got to think of that as other people, the bodies they came across, would have been a similar situation. And you wonder, because the woman in that was sort of wearing almost like a wedding gown or something. But anyway, I thought that was sort of interesting. I thought maybe it was a funeral thing. Maybe she'd done it for a funeral. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, all is lost. I think we got to that point where they're all sort of sitting there not sure what's going to happen, but Zac reveals that there's oscillations. He needs finer equipment, and they have a look and they see like the 80s era graphics, which is just astonishing.
She even says, "What does that mean?"
Yeah, what does that mean? And he's like, "There's oscillations."
Thank
and
God.
here,
Good question. I have no idea.
and here it goes off the sides, basically sort of saying we've got about 24 hours, and this event's going to happen again.
Yes, kids, you needed a scientist to decipher what a computer was telling us in the 80s.
Yeah, didn't just have a computer voice saying you end of world event.
No, you didn't
12
have
hours.
12 hours left and counting.
Yeah, so
but it wasn't it? It was a countdown, but just not that type of countdown.
Yeah, so we've got a death clock on there, and they're going, well, there's going to be an event, and all life, the chances of them all being, dead at the right moment, but then surviving seems pretty slim.
And what was great was just with that's when we have this real trip out, Inception styled moment that we spoke about earlier. Where,
how cool was that?
They basically, there's a little tremor, and they all kind of separate, right? Like on the planes of existence. So in this version, it's done with some montaging, it's done with some double dissolving of the characters. It's also done with Api walking up a wall kind of thing where the furniture is still stagnant. And also the sound of them talking echoes more. Yeah. They're not on the same existence like you and I are now.
And Zac walks along the wall and goes out sideways through the door, out to the front, and then suddenly he's all back the right way.
Back the right way.
See, I love that. I thought that, like, if I saw that in 1985, back when I was like just a real young kid, but if I saw that in the 80s, like back before any of these computer graphics, and I saw it, you would sort of go, wow, that's really cool. Like the way Api sort of turns around on this couch and like his feet go up on the wall. When I was watching this film, I was going, oh, that's okay. So that's where they're going to leave it. But then he stood up on the wall and I just went, okay, that looks really good.
They've done that really well. Yeah. They kind of all come back together, and Zac explains that it's probably a tremor. And this is where that theme of the film is coming out of, hey, like you guys were doing some sort of experiment and this is the outcome, as well. And they were like, well, that's really trippy. And so Zac is saying, well, if we stop this death clock, like we could destroy it. And maybe when the event happens, we can kind of re-trigger it and recreate and bring humanity back.
Yeah, it wasn't really made clear as to whether it would just leave them the way they was, or it would do a redo, or...
Yeah.
Because I liked that, and I thought... It brought up this whole thing is like you may not have much, but at least you've got some other people.
Yeah.
Like, there might just be the three of them. Like there's not really much hope for the human race.
No.
But there's kind of people that you can interact with.
Definitely.
Because even if you're on your own and you're like maybe you're really finally I can do my painting. I can finally write that screenplay.
That's right.
And then you write it and you go, well, there's no one to enjoy it.
There's no one to read it, right?
Yeah, there's no film going to be made, or no one's going to see this painting I did. It could be the best or the worst painting, and it wouldn't make any difference.
No.
because it doesn't affect anyone else. Yeah, so
exactly right.
I think it was good that they didn't sort of outright say this will save the world.
No.
Or will doom it, or do anything in particular, except it'll stop it from happening again.
Yeah. Yeah, was the plan. So that, to me, is like pushing it into Act 3.
Yeah, that's Act 3 there, because they've got this plan now.
Our plan. The three of us are going to go do this. And so straight away, it's, as you always say, collecting the resources. So it's they go and get explosives. And they pack up this huge
truck full of gelignite.
Gelignite. And we've got to go back. You know, Zac is like, well, we'll go back to the science lab station thing. And that we saw at the start, and we'll just blow it up, you know, when the event is scheduled to happen.
And as usual, we do have a couple of hitches.
Yeah, we do.
So there's the tanker truck across the way.
That's right, and he has to barge
for some reason, Api decides to ram a tanker truck with a truck full of explosives. And you're thinking, you could actually just get in and, like, take the handbrake off and
probably wobble
turn it, and then, like, have the other truck just sort of nudge it forward, and you could just... No, he rams it a couple, and you know, Zac and Joanne are like hiding behind their car as if that's going to help.
I know.
A truck with that much explosive,
yeah.
I've seen Mythbusters enough times to know that a truck full of explosives makes a big boom.
It does.
But they get through that, and then they have their next little barrier, which is, of course, the radiation.
Yeah,
it's going to cook you if you get there.
Too close. If you get too close to the station, you're going to die. Like you'd be cooked.
So presumably like his buddy in the grid control room.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of nice.
And so he says, well, if we run back, I can get that, which is what we saw earlier, the remote control lawnmower, and leaving the angst, the passion between these two in the sort of view tower. And, of course, they kind of have a moment in time.
Yeah, Api's mustache does its magic.
It does. And Api, you know, he says, well, I'm the driver, like I'll drive the truck of explosions.
Yeah, I'll do it.
And you sort of think, well, that's right. That's the stereotype. And then the big truck is hurtling towards the station. They see Zac's driving it.
Yeah, well, because Zac has learnt something, hasn't he?
He has.
He's gone, I tried to, I felt guilty about it. I tried chickening out by, overdosing.
Yeah.
But he was sort of saved by this event. And
he has a second chance.
He's learnt here now. He's on like, Joanne and Api, they're doing nice together. He didn't want to break that up.
Yeah.
He even said, no, I can handle it.
Yeah.
And so he's going, well, it's sort of, this is he's learned. He go, I can actually take the action I should have taken. I should have stopped this experiment before it happened the first time. I can stop it this time.
Yeah.
And so it felt natural for him to do it. Like it would have felt a bit dark to let Api do it.
Oh, totally.
That would have been,
you take the fall.
Yeah, that would have been, you would have been going, that's not nice.
Yeah.
So he does. He drives in there, and we get a lovely explosion. This beautiful radio dish falls over, and
it's a big explosion.
Was that a model?
It must have been, but it's well done.
Because I was looking at it going, the falling radio dish and some of the exploding debris. I thought, because initially I thought, what they've done,
you couldn't blow that up for 600.
Is they've done like a depth of field trick, where the camera is down low, so you can't really see the real base of the radio dish. Yeah. It's actually miles off that way, or it's hundreds of meters that way, and they just built like a shed and a bit of a fence from Bunnings. They got the Stratco 3x4 shed for $700, and they just blown that up. Yeah. But then they had the dish fall over, and I thought, that dish it looks weighty. Did they build a big model? Like, how big does that have to be for that? Or maybe they actually had to demolish a radio dish in New Zealand.
Maybe.
Probably should have looked that up, actually.
Yeah.
Now
because actually, early in the film, there is a big scene where it's implied a plane had fallen out of the sky, remember? Yes. And that was done really well as well. Like, it was a burning factory, and they just had the wing and the
motor,
engine
a couple of seats.
Yeah, a couple of burnt seats and that. But that factory is probably a demolished factory or something. They kind of like lit some little fires and they shoved those props in. But that looked really cool, actually.
Yeah, in the film. It looked high budget.
Definitely looked high budget.
Okay, so we got the finale here, the final confrontation.
Everything blows up.
Where Zac learnt his lesson. They got through their difficulties, and he went and blew the whole thing up, and we end up with a bit of a closing image here, because
then he wakes up.
Yeah, it's just, we have the closing image is kind of a mirror. We have the water, but it's not the sun rising.
No,
it's a planet rising.
It's a planet rising, and
this time, instead of being asleep on his bed as after the sunrise, as it's rising, he stands up on this beach and he looks out of clouds. Are there birds flying around? I can't remember, but
Yeah, I don't think it's birds, but the clouds are oddly shaped as well.
Yeah, they're weird sort of
They're kind
alien-shaped clouds.
Towers, aren't they?
And just because you don't want to be confused and think it's the moon that you're seeing, it has a Saturn-like ring.
Yeah, rising.
And so, so the opening image was red sun and him being unconscious.
Yeah.
And this one here was like an alien environment with him being
Awake.
fully awake.
Yeah.
And
so he's alone in both.
He is alone.
He's naked in the first bit. This one he's dressed.
Yes.
He's on the beach versus a lonely bed.
Yes.
But there's no one else around. We don't actually see anyone.
No, I got a general feeling of wonder and, it was a positive feeling I got.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Which is interesting. You wonder, is this sort of his second chance? Like his heaven? Did he die? Oh, he must have died. He got exploded, right?
Yeah.
But is this his
or did
heaven?
his plan work and he's been thrust into a alternate universe?
Yes,
then in this alternate universe, there will be people again.
Yes.
And he'll have another chance.
But I think him being awake and the planet rising and so forth, it's like it's a new dawn. It's
new dawn,
not just a new day, it's a whole new everything.
Yeah, it's a new everything.
It's a new start.
Yeah, it's a new start for him, yeah.
Of course, the other interpretation is that we don't see him facing the camera, he's facing away from the camera, which is traditionally, and the water is traditionally associated with death.
It is, yeah.
It's the person who's dead
and he
in
does
portraiture
walk a bit into the water. Like he doesn't completely walk into the water.
Yeah.
But he does walk into the water.
So I'm thinking maybe heavenish arrangement here.
My interpretation, and look, it is open-ended, my interpretation at the end was that all those things we've actually just said. So it's like a new dawn, new life, new setup, new scenario for him. And I kind of feel like his plan, my reading into it is that his plan kind of worked and he's woken up in a bit of an alternative Earth, like it's like now. So whether there's going to be people or not, and there might be aliens behind him, but it's like for him, it's a new start.
Yeah, I definitely got a positive vibe.
Because I'm not really thinking, for me, not so much heaven, but more because it was so science-based, this film, I feel like it's more like an alternative universe or something.
I got a positive vibe out of it, and it was their book ending as well.
Yeah.
And to see an alternative, you watch Alita, as I said, where it's a lot of anime is like this.
Yeah.
And it's in part because they leave it open-ended because they want to make sequels, but they just don't know until they've got some funding. So a lot of them just these films get thrown together and they want the sequels because they want a series.
Yeah, for sure.
And so they purposefully leave it that way to see if there's demand. But it also sort of, it is a Japanese cultural thing to have that. And so watch that movie, Alita. It's quite a fun movie. It's a bit longer. It goes for the best part of 2 hours. But it shows non-strictly bookended structure.
Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, this to me has bookends. It just is an open-ended. And again, culturally, there's plenty of more independent cinema. It has more of an open-end ending, right? Like you're not quite, everything is tied up perfectly. When you would say that really is that Hollywood ending, you know, like where every single little story gets rounded up in a moment's end.
Yeah.
Whereas, you watch films like this, a lot of European cinema does that too, where they don't end it on, hey, this is everything all wound up in one happily ever after story, So, anyway, but let us know what you thought. What was your interpretation of the ending? What do you think happened? Did he die? Did he go to heaven? Was this a new reality?
Were they actually, were they a kind of suicide and they were in purgatory? Like this whole Catholic concept of purgatory where the suicides go and they don't. And then he managed to redeem them to heaven?
Yeah.
I know.
It's interesting because he was naked, and if you really think about it, he was like a baby is born naked into the world, right? So he's born, whereas then at the end he's dressed. I wasn't. You weren't? You came out in a full
I came fully.
Suit.
I had like the singlet on and like gym shorts on. I was ready to go.
Ready to go to the gym.
I was looking for that rear delt machine straight up.
Definitely. Okay, what about ladder time? What kind of other films? All the films that we've been looking at. This is 98 films we've looked at now on spacebrains.
Holy moly!
I know. So you got 98 films to pick from. Well, we don't put them in maybe with the classics as much, but what would be a couple other films you think a viewer could watch with this film?
Okay, so I really liked The Dish.
Yeah.
Because it has a scientist. It's Australian. It's not New Zealand, but it's close. I mean, it's got... Does The Dish have Sam Neill?
Has Sam Neill. He's New Zealand.
He's New Zealand.
Yeah.
As all good Australians.
Yeah.
as we all know. So the Dish, it's sort of, slightly irreverent, comical look, but at this sort of science of one of man's greatest achievements, thanks to primarily one particular woman. So it's actually kind of her achievement. But, we'll gloss it over because that's the way we men do things. And then the other side of it is Don't Look Up.
Oh, yeah.
So Don't Look Up is where the scientists do try to warn everyone.
Yeah.
So, in the middle there is The Quietearth, where he didn't speak up. He didn't stop it, even though he kind of suspected it wasn't a good thing. In Don't Look Up, they do. They speak up. Nobody wants to hear it.
No one wants to hear it.
And I've got mixed feelings about that film, but it's pretty good. It's worth
very
seeing.
good film.
But that's what I reckon would be, those three films kind of, they share themes, but have different views and different approaches to it, I think.
Yeah, excellent. I went more apocalyptic films that we've looked at as well. So Snowpiercer and I Am Mother. And I just kind of thought, well, yeah, there are a couple of the apocalyptic ones where, okay, in Snowpiercer, he's not on his own. He's on a train with people.
At the end,
is...
it crashes and there's into that new world.
Yeah, that's it.
Is there anyone else out there that's for some reason they're thinking, there probably is.
Yeah.
There's polar bears. I thought everything was dead, but there's polar bear. And that means polar bear's eaten something. Yeah.
So I kind of liked that. I thought that was a bit, like this in End of the World apocalyptic. And then that I Am Mother idea of the robot raising a child and, because of the end of the world and what the robots and humans have done to the world, and that there isn't really anything out there apart from maybe more mothers.
Yes.
But we don't, again, that's open to interpretation of how big that world is. And so, I just thought that those two films both, I suppose that those films left me with a bit of a similar feeling to what this film left me with as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, there is a similar vibe to it that both these films have that ending where we do have a new beginning, but how optimistic it's going to be, who knows? How positive it's going to be, we don't really know, but it is a new beginning. So I liked that. Anyway, what other films would you suggest that we should watch with this, or other audience members should? Let us know. Hit us up on the socials and think about what films would go nicely with The Quiet Earth. So, sorry, what about some science? What are we going to be talking about? Gelignite? How much gelignite it would take to blow up a satellite station?
Actually, we talked about how much nuclear bombs it would take to shift the Earth.
Yeah, we did.
So that's an interesting one. Go back to, which episode was that? That was the day the Earth caught fire, I think it was. Yeah, so, no, I mentioned it earlier. There's a book called The World Without Us, and it was a docu-series as well. As a 2007 non-fiction book about what would happen to the natural and built environment if humans suddenly disappeared. It was written by American journalist Alan Weisman, probably Weisman, and published by St. Martin's Thomas Dunn Books. It's an interesting book, and I've gone through and I've got some interesting ideas out of it. So this question is, in this scenario, as we saw in this film, all humans just ceased to exist. So there wasn't a slow wind-up of a civilization that collapsed and failed over hundreds or thousands of years. Yep. This is just from day one to day two, bang, everyone's gone. People.
Yep.
How long does it take for things to break down, for nature to take over? What about animal species returning and so forth? And so I've got an interesting question here, because this kind of blew my mind a bit. So we've heard of Machu Picchu, right? So there's a 1923 photo of it, I think, back in the day, and you've probably seen it, but it was just barely recognisable as a ruin, overgrown. It was just trash. So the question is, how long did it take? So this is 1923, beginning of the 20th century. How long from it was populated to that point was that? Just roughly.
2,000 years?
2,000 years. Good guess. 400.
Okay. Right.
About 400. So,
okay.
Yeah, I know this. This is
Yeah, it's
what
hard
gets
to
me.
know.
It's like
Yeah, it's hard
Machu
to know.
Picchu was, from the late 1400s,
Right,
early
okay, yeah,
1500s.
okay,
It was
yeah.
about 100 years-ish that it was populated, they reckon.
Yeah.
And, it had grain fields and civic buildings and temples and houses. It was like a full-on city up there. And the weather up there is apparently quite mild and pleasant all year round, which is quite nice. So it was a really good spot for this. It was in a very remote, inaccessible spot, which it was good because for 100 years, no enemies came and trashed it.
Yeah.
Cortez with the Spanish changed that, but they didn't actually go up there and destroy Machu Picchu. It's just they beat the Incans up so badly. And in comparison, of course, we have the cathedral, der Dom, in Mainz, Germany.
Right.
It was already 400 years old at the time that Machu Picchu was built.
Wow.
And so it's about 1,000 years old. And it is still there and still in use and service. The difference being, of course, that all the Incans left Machu Picchu and it just overgrew. 400 years, it became a barely recognizable as a ruin. And it was made out of stone. So it's like all the wood and stuff was long gone. But the 1,000-year-old cathedral, and you go to the tour in France, they've got that massive cathedral there. Similar, it's more like about 800 years old or something.
Yeah.
The difference being, of course, humans have continuously looked after it, cleaned it up, patched bits. They've kept the gutters and drains clear so rain didn't stay in there, and they kept the animals out.
Yeah.
Except for the worshipping masses. Ha 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 ha. Yes, but other than those animals, so. You could sort of say that there's about 400 years. That's a model we have of that. This guy, Alan Weisman, he went around and spoke to a bunch of experts, engineers, historians, and so forth about that. So here's the next question. The next interesting point that you got to think about is power generation and water pressure. So in this, I think it was a good week or so before we had a scene, or maybe it was a couple of weeks. It was some period where before the lights went out. So the question is, again, I have a bit of insight into this because I worked in the energy industry for a little while, but how long does it take before power turns off? Because apocalypse films sometimes inexplicably have power.
Yeah. It would go out. In any apocalypse, it would go out. But I think, is it something like 3 to 5 days?
It's probably less than 24 hours.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, something like that. Mainly because at any given time, X power is being generated and put on the grid.
Yeah.
And that's balancing the same amount of power being used. That's what they've got to do. They've got to balance the amount of power being generated with power being used. Because if you start using more, then that causes a greater load on the generators, which slows them down.
Yeah.
And here in Australia, we've got, 50 hertz power sockets, 240 volt?
Yes.
And the hertz will drop from 50. And if it drops down to, say, 48 or 47.5, safety systems kick off and turn everything off.
Yeah.
Likewise, if it goes to about 51 and a half, 52, again, power systems have safety features to stop them from overloading and turn off. So if you had a building catch fire, for example, and suddenly all of its power dropped out, or, more likely aluminium smelter, which uses, I think the aluminium smelters in New South Wales use about 10% of New South Wales power. This one factory uses about 10%. They're incredibly...
And those desalination plants.
And the desal plants,
They just gigawatts of power.
If they were running, the moment they turned off, which they would do, they'd run out of something would overflow or pressure would...
There'd be a safety.
You'd have this massive drop in power usage and the power plants would go out.
Yeah.
Nuclear plants would continue generating power probably for a couple of days. Gas turbines could run for maybe 3 days if they've got a good supply. Coal, less than 24 hours. But the grid itself would stop. So even though they're generating, they'd just be going to Earth. Because all of their substation, everything would kick in their little bits and pieces. So 24 hours after people disappeared, power drops, water pressure drops because there's no pumping. But there's more. So 36 hours is the next landmark. Not such a problem here in Mandurah, but certainly say in Perth, but particularly London and New York. Any idea what that would be?
Sewage.
Yeah, it's the underground stuff. So the subway systems in particular. Because, all the sewage, because we don't have any pumps, all the sewage, any water that flowed, say, would keep flowing into the system, but the system wouldn't be emptying.
Yes.
And so you get like the Perth Underground Station, like particularly say Elizabeth Quay, which is actually right next to the river and below. You can bet they've got sump pumps working.
Yep.
And particularly New York, Manhattan Island goes up to 9 stories underground below sea level.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that would just flood in 36 hours. All of the subways and any underground areas would flood completely.
Well, there is pumps in Perth under Mire in Forest Chase.
Yes.
Because that's swampland, and there's pumps there that are sub pumps that you're talking about.
They
pump water out all the time.
Constantly. Yeah. You can imagine Holland. That would.
So the main part of Perth would start to flood.
Yeah, I would
water
expect
would
so.
just start to come up.
There's
from
parts
the ground.
here in Mandurah which I go past and I look and think, given the way sea levels are rising, like
give it a meter.
You're already
you're right on the line.
On sea level there. Like that swampy ground you're on. Like it's just that people poured like maybe about 1.5 meters of sand on top. Anyway, so that's very interesting. So within 36 hours, you'd already you'd be unrecognizable. Like all the underground areas you wouldn't be able to use. The power would all be out. Yeah. You turn the taps on. Maybe if you're in a low-lying area that's got a water tower, you'd still get a bit of water pressure just from gravity.
Yep.
But
generally,
just due to leaks and so forth, like certainly if you're in all your towers, your buildings have no water pressure.
Yeah.
Which of course mean that fires would inevitably happen.
Yeah.
Particularly nuclear power stations, as I mentioned, without anyone there to keep track of how much power they're producing. Yeah. Sudden load goes off the grid. Where's all that power go? Yeah. You would end up with meltdowns, nuclear radiation. There'd be massive coal. A lot of these coal power stations we have in Australia are fed directly from a coal mine right next to it. And if that catches on fire, if a coal mine catches on fire, it doesn't go out. Like they really don't want coal mines to catch fire. There are some coal mines where underground they're burning. Yeah. And they will never go out until all of the coal is gone, and that will take years. But so that's interesting. So then we're going to skip forward. Then it's interesting to think then that the biggest towers would fall first because they require the most maintenance. Things like gutters would start filling up, paint jobs would flake and crack, rust would get in, and as soon as you get some of those structural supports breaking, like the glass is falling out, the towers are falling down. Homes like the house we're in at the moment, the recording studio, made of just bricks and things. Again, water would get in them, the wood would rot. It would, after 500 years. So we're talking Machu Picchu abandonment time. We're basically our streets and cities are just grasslands and forests, with crumbled ruin. Yeah. And they reckon that a typical suburban home would only really be recognisable maybe if it had like a big stone fireplace. Right. Not many do these days. Yeah. Otherwise, probably the stainless steel cookware and aluminium parts in your dishwasher is how you'd recognise that there was a house there.
Wow.
All your cabinetry, all of the plasterboard and all of that gone. The bricks would have cracked. Not so much here and where it's temperate, but anywhere where you got frost, for certain, the bricks would just shatter and fall apart as everything sort of took off. So I thought that was interesting. So basically 500 years after people have gone, you're looking at a lush green... Well, I mean, you look at some of the rental properties around and, they're not as keen on maybe doing the gardening as you see like the retirees who've got, like there's a couple out here, they've got golf course, trimmed, manicured grass. But you're talking about there's a rental property where it's not really their house. They're working all the time to pay the rent anyway. Yeah. There's sort of weeds and stuff in the cracks of the brickwork of the driveway. Give that just a few years, and those pavers are coming out as the weeds grow through. Look, I know, like I had some paving at the back of my old house that I didn't clean up as often as I perhaps should, and it started shifting around. Yep. So 500 years we got forest lands, but then we have the big question, which is how long until we get back the sort of biodiversity that used to be here before humans? Like when do we return to that? Like elephants in the Mediterranean. That's and rhinos in Siberia. Yeah. These megafauna that died out inevitably when humans came in. care to think of any timescales there?
Well, if you got 500
So we're talking about the biodiversity is similar to the Serengeti, so pretty fab.
Yeah, I don't know, like 1,000 years?
Sadly, 3 to 7 million.
Oh,
It would take that long for basically evolution, for these animals to slowly take back ground that has been opened.
Yeah, right.
And they've looked at places like Pripyat near Chernobyl, which has basically been locked off since 1986, I think.
Apparently there's dogs there.
There are dogs that they're doing fine.
Dogs.
They're checking out the DNA to see if there's been any adaptations.
Yeah, werewolves.
Because the animals have a shorter birth cycle.
Yeah.
So the radiation will give a dog cancer in 5 years.
Yeah.
But they breed after 1.5 years.
Yeah.
And so they can actually have a couple generations before they're in worry about cancer, which gives them plenty of chance. So since 1996, you've got to think, let's call it a 3-year generation. What's that, 20, 40 years?
Yeah.
Is it? So let's call it 40 years. There's been about 10, 12 generations, in that time. And they've got deer coming back there and so forth. It's been an interesting case study because there are trees there growing that weren't planted because they're coming out of pavement.
Yeah.
And, so that's only 40 years-ish.
Yeah.
I think, my math's about right, but just a bit under 40 years. And already you see photos of it and it's just, the buildings are all crumbling. It's, falling apart and slowly wildlife is creeping in. They've got deer, they've got wild dogs, they've got Russians.
Might explain the Russian behaviour at the moment.
Actually, I think the Russians have returned. I think they've returned Chernobyl. They said, actually, this is kind of not. We don't really want. I don't think they really want to get involved in it. They had sort of got in there, and it was a bit of a thing they were looking at, being a bit scary. And then I think they've gone. You know what? It's just not. It's not strategic. It's not doing it. It's not good.
You can have that back in Ukraine.
You can look after Chernobyl if you like. It's just a dead expense. So 3 to 7 million years.
Wow.
But you could imagine then, so aliens come down to Earth in, let's call it 7 million years' time. And they would initially see no outward sign of human civilization.
Yeah, wow.
Like there would be, as I said, there would be elephants, there'd be new species of adapted animals all about the place.
Yeah.
When they started digging, they would find, radioactive hotspots, which at first might seem maybe just natural until they sort of looked a bit, and looked at the ratio of plutonium. They go, hang on, that amount of plutonium-239 just doesn't exist normally. So there would be some indication that there was civilization here. 30, 40 million years, the Earth has covered over most things. It's subducted. If aliens visited and landed and were here for a couple hundred years doing archaeology, which they wouldn't initially do. Why would they? There'd be no reason. They'd look around and go, there's no reason to do archaeology here. But they'd be digging their own subways. Yep. And they'd come across maybe like a dog, a dog skeleton or something and go, oh, that's an unusual species. We haven't seen that running around here. And they go, it looks domesticated. So there'd be some things there, but not many. And I think it's really interesting to think that 65 million years ago, the dinosaurs disappeared. Yeah. And we barely know what dinosaurs or what other animals lived at the same time. Yeah. We've got a few fossils. And we think we've got a lot. Like you look at the list of dinosaurs, but you think about what the diversity of life must have been, we've seen nothing. A tip of an iceberg in terms of that. In that 65 million years, there could have been an entire, humans rose after about 100,000 years. Yep. There could have been a whole intelligent race evolved, grew up, became technologically capable. Yeah. Clearly they didn't do any nuclear stuff or anything that left plastics everywhere. But let's say they got to late Middle Ages. Yeah. They could have easily got to late Middle Ages before disease or something took them out. Yeah. And we would never know. Yeah. There's just, unless we just, pure luck come across some sort of a relic. Yeah. Which at 40 million years old,
probably wouldn't
you
exist.
wouldn't, it'd be it's just pure luck we come across dinosaurs, really. Yeah, it'd be amazing. So there you go. And only about 100,000 years for our CO2 levels to return to normal. Huh. Yeah, if just left. And that's in part because those coal mines have been burning and so forth, and so
It would take a while.
it will take a while to stabilize. I mean, the good news is, of course, the Earth has been at this similar level of carbon dioxide, and there were species that grew and adapted and were able to change to it. So life won't end. Humans disappeared.
Yeah.
And in 100,000 years, their carbon dioxide would be gone.
Yeah.
Let's call it 4 or 5 million years. Animal life will have returned to where we just annihilated it.
And who knows, some other weird human
Something else could take another 30, 40 million years, but something else might grow.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating. It's a very interesting book. It's a great, just watch the TV series. It's quicker.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating to think about.
It is, well and truly.
Yeah, how these things go.
So that brings us to the end of The Quiet Earth, and what we talked about in this episode was talking about a film where a planet where there's no humans. One day there's no humans apart from our main character. So it's a different take on it. It's a New Zealand look at, the world with an apocalypse of everyone disappearing instantly and what that might mean. So what were your thoughts about the film? What did you think about the podcast? Give us a rating, share us around with your friends, family, etc. Hit up our festival. There'll be more details coming for that. Next episode
will be...
Everything, everyone, everywhere.
All at once?
All at once. Everything at once. Whatever that
Everything,
is.
everywhere, all at once.
So it's just coming off a massive awards season.
7 Academy Awards?
Sensationally hit a lot of awards out there, not only Oscars, BAFTAs, Golden Globes, all sorts of things over this last few months. A couple of really heartwarming stories of the key actors as well involved. Made by the Daniel brothers, who also, their previous film was that Swiss Army Man, which is a cool little film as well. So we'll be looking at it for episode 99 of Spacebrains.
Yes, and we alluded to some scenes of it in this podcast.
We did.
Unless you've seen the film, you won't know which scenes we're talking about.
No.
But you will after you watch the film. So watch the film, tune into us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.